last week. We talked about whether we look at nisuin, chuppah and nisuin, as a fourth kinyan, or whether we looked at it, the term that we used was ma'aseh ishuti. In other words, this is, in a sense, the way we would want it to be in general, that it's not a kinyan at all, but it is a formal action which initiates the marital relationship, which is not a kinyan. We talked about the various nafkaminot between those two tfisot. There was another possibility, which is a combination of both, which actually emerges from the Rambam. So I printed out, pass it around. Two Rambams. I think these were in the Makorot from last week, but I don't assume that you have them with you now. So I just want to show this to you. Okay, it's the Rambam in Hilchot Ishut in Perek Yud Halacha Bet. Okay, so the Rambam says as follows: Kivan שנכנסה הארוסה לחופה, הרי זו מותרת לו לבוא עליה בכל עת שירצה, והרי היא אשתו גמורה לכל דבר. Now that language already should raise some antennas. Ishto gmura lechol davar. That implies, and we'll see, that there's a possibility that she should be ishto she'ena gmura lechol davar, but not an arusa. Already in this language, I can sense that the Rambam thinks that there's a middle possibility where the woman is no longer an arusa, but she's not a nisu'ah gmura yet. It sounds like a strange sort of situation. Let's just see. Just that's from the language. There's no case yet, but that's from the language. Okay. So when נכנסה לחופה, הרי היא אשתו גמורה לכל דבר. ומי שתיכנס לחופה, נקראת נשואה. We know why the Rambam stresses this, because there are these different halachot that apply between nisuot and arusot. Okay? אף על פי שלא נבעלה, because bia is, you don't require chuppah, you don't require bia in order to have nisuin. והיא שתהיה ראויה לבעילה. Is the Rambam Shita, that you need chuppah haruya lebi'ah in order that the chuppah should be effective. Okay? Val im hayta nida, af al pi shenechnesa lachuppah v'nityached ima, lo gamru hanisuin. That's this language. Lo gamru hanisuin, v'harehi ki arusa adayin. Okay? I am just reading it that way without comment. Okay? The fact that, what we said last time, is the fact that we would require chuppah haruya lebi'ah would indicate, you don't need kinyan kesef ra'ui lebi'ah, that at the time that he's mekadesh b'kesef, that she should be ru'ya lebi'ah. There's no halach like that, right? But chuppah for nisuin has to be ru'ya lebi'ah. That would indicate that we understand chuppah not to be a kinyan, but an act of ishut. So that's why she has to be ru'ya lebi'ah. Okay. If it's not ru'ya lebi'ah, so if you just take the simple reading of the Rambam, then she's not a nisuah. You need chuppah ru'ya lebi'ah. If she's not chuppah she'ina ru'ya lebi'ah, there's no nisuah. Okay. But again, remember how I read it. Okay, now let's do halacha vav. Perek Yud halacha vav. Hama'areset ha'isha uberech birkat chatanim v'lo nityached ima beveito. So there was no chuppah. There's just birkat chatanim, shev brachas. Okay. V'lo nityached ima beveito adayin arusahi. Because there's some sort of havamina that the brachot should make the nisuin. She'ein birkat chatanim oseh nisuin. Because the Gemara says, the Gemara quotes Masechet Kala, that says Kala lo bracha asural ba'ala kinida. So the lo bracha, if the bracha that we're referring to is the birkat chatanim. So from that you can understand that it's the brakat chatanim that makes her muteret. They're saying no, the brakat chatanim does not make her muteret. Brakat chatanim, it does not make nisuin. Okay, brakat chatanim does not nisuin make. Okay, ela knisa lachupa, erase v'kines lachupa, v'lo birech brakat chatanim. Har'el zo nisua gmura, the same language, right? Notice the birkat chatanim is not ma'akev nisuin even. Okay, Har'el zo nisua gmura, v'chozer mevarech, and then later, if he didn't do the bracha b'shat nisuin, v'chozer mevarech afilu achar kama yamim. Okay, v'lo tinasei nida ad shetitaher. Okay, so that goes to that you need a chuppah haru'iyah leviyah. Okay. Ve'ein mivarchin la birkat chatanim ad shetitaher. Right, so there's no sheva brachot for a chuppah she'ina ru'ya leviyah, right? Because you're not supposed to do that chuppah, and she's not a nisua gemura, quote unquote. Listen very carefully. Ve'ein mivarchin la birkat chatanim ad shetitaher. Ve'im avar v'nasa. If he did a chuppah, yichud, and it was eino ra'ui l'biyah, ubeirech, and he did birkat chatanim, even though he wasn't supposed to, eino chozer mevarech. That's the key here. So you don't do the bracha again. So it's clear that the nuances that we were paying attention to before are true. Namely, that the Rambam holds that there are two different aspects to nisuin, and it's possible to, I'll spell that out what they are in a second. It's possible to have a situation where the woman is lo gamru hanisuin, right? The nisuin have not been completed. Vaharehi ki arusa adayin, but she's also ki nisua. She's somewhere in between. Okay. And that would be why that even though they're not supposed to have a chuppah she'eino ra'ui l'biyah, if they have a chuppah ra'ui l'biyah, and they are mevarech the brachot that you shouldn't be mevarech, you're not mevarech them again, because that would make a bracha. That would make it a bracha of hatol. So that means the brachot that were made on the chuppah she'eina ra'uya l'biyah were brachot on a chuppah. Okay. So what is the significance of this interim status? So I think what you can understand from here is that if we ask the question, is chuppah and nisuin a kinyan, or is it a maseh ishut? So the answer is yes, because it's both. And since it's both, it's actually possible to split between the two. If ichnisa l'shuto, right? We talked about chuppah that way, and even if it's eino ra'ui l'biyah, if it's ichnisa l'shuto, so that is that would be the kinyani aspect. Okay. If, however, it's ra'ui l'biyah, so then that's the ishuti aspect. Normally, if it's ra'ui l'biyah, so it both happen at the same time, so there's no laboratory test in a sense. But here we have a laboratory test where he is machnis l'shuto, so it is chuppah, but it's eino ra'ui l'biyah. So that makes it that she's in between, that she is no longer an arusa, lo gamru hanisuin, the hitchilu. Right, that's the implication. Hitchilu hanisuin, avalo gamru, v'harehi ki arusa adayin, for certain things. Okay? Now, what would that be? So, if you think about the whole list of different halachot that apply, the difference between a nisuah and an arusa. So, some of them some of them are purely financial in nature, and some of them are ishuti in nature. For example, the fact that the Kohen is nitma li'ishto. That's only if she's she'er b'saro. So I would say, in that case, if the chuppah was eino ra'ui l'biyah, it's adayin asur lo, right? Because it's chaser b'tzad ha'ishuti. But if you think about the fact there's a ketubah for a nisuah, automatically, even if you don't write it, so that's financial. So then that would take effect because nichnasa lechuppah. Right? If you look at the whole list in where is it, in Perek, the Rambam gives a whole list. You can decide which one you would put into which category. Okay, but that would be the approach. That there are certain aspects of nisuin which are financial, and that would take effect. Even according to the Rambam, that would take effect, and that's why b'diavad, if you make the brachot at that time, the brachot were on a chuppah that affected something. But she's not nisuah gemura because the tzad ha'ishuti has not been created because the chuppah could not lead to ishut, so the tzad ha'ishuti couldn't be created. Okay, so that's just important.
That's your surmising that, which things would apply, which things would apply.
Right, the Rambam doesn't say, but it's reasonable to assume that if you take the deal with the Rambam, I think from the halacha about the brachot, it's undeniable. Then you go back and you notice all this language of niswa gmura and ki arusa. So I think it makes sense to split it that way. There were literature Rosh Yeshiva that said that. Rav Naftali Trupp, who was in Radin in the 30s, in his chidushim on the Rambam, I think says that. He talks about two different aspects of chuppah. So the reason this is important is if last time we talked about two different models, one looking at chuppah and nisun as another kinyan, another looking at it as it's not a kinyan, it's a maaseh ishuti, because ishut is the relationship between the man and the wife, between the husband and wife, is created not by a kinyan ultimately. So that dichotomy is not mutually exclusive. It could be that it's both. Right? And that goes back to when we talked about even in the Maaseh Kiddushin, that the Maaseh Kiddushin itself, if you talk about Kiddushay Kesef or Kiddushay Shtar, there are financial aspects, republic aspects. And if you talk about Kiddushay Biyah, so there's the personal aspect, right? So that's already embedded in Kiddushin itself and plays itself out in Nisuin as well. Okay? So I just wanted to add that from last time. Yeah.
To just review from last time, because I wasn't sure after. Is there a rishon that represents the Maaseh Yishut idea and a rishon that represents
the question? Yes. The machloken around what chuppah is goes around that. Whether chuppah is, this question for Har'el, right? The Ran summarizes the opinions in the beginning of Masechet Ketubot. And he talks about whether chuppah is biyah or chuppah has to be ra'ui l'biyah or chuppah is just knisa l'rishuto. All the questions about do you need edut l'kiyum hadavar, do you need can you make a Tnai? Those type of questions go around.
And you saw that there was a certain rishon that held.
The question of edut and Tnai is later. It's not among the rishonim, but the question of how you define chuppah is a question in the rishonim.
So I think I understood that there's not a particular rishon who is still Gail Barayon, but there's
They don't talk about it as Maaseh Shuti or as a Maaseh Kinyan, but it already emerges from the Gemara when the Gemara talks about chuppah as being koneh as a possibility.
You haven't really identified Rambam as that, but now you're
right, but I'm saying the Rambam is more complicated now. Right, but the idea to say, if you say that you need chuppah ra'ui l'biyah, that would indicate that chuppah is at least also, right, I'm amending it, right, is at least also a maaseh ishuti. Right, it doesn't preclude the possibility that it's also a kinyan. It could be both. Okay?
This phrase maaseh ishuti, this is really our phrase, yeah?
It's a Chronisher phrase.
Is it?
Yeah.
So it's on.
In other words, it's not a kinyan, so you have to call it something, right? So it's something that has to do with Hakot Ishut.
And so the concept's not explicit in the Rishonim. It's only in
that phraseology is not explicit in Rishonim, but if you understand that it's connected to Biyah and you don't need Eitim. So. Okay, so that's as far as the Yisum is concerned. Now I would like to talk about Tnai. And my goal is that next week we should get into the whole issue of Tnai b'Kiddushin and Tnai b'Nisuin. But in order to understand that, it's really unavoidable, and I think it's actually a good idea to understand something about Mishpatei Tnaim. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do today. A lot of the examples have to do with Ishut, and there will be something to learn about Ishut from the way they talk about Tnai in Ishut. But the full ramifications of what we're talking about today will be next week. Okay, so let's just talk about Tnaim, because this is very important to understand how part of this we talked about in passing last week. I want to get into it more now, because when you understand how Tnai works, how making conditions work, then you understand how the actions themselves work, right? And the relationship between the action and Da'at, which is actually, of course, very important to understand how Kedushin works. Okay, so we're just trying to get to the bottom of some things here. Okay, yeah.
On this topic, what you spelled out at the end of last week, that you can only make a Tnai and those things that you can designate a shliach.
So I want to talk about that more.
Okay. I guess I was surprised. I'm curious where that shows up. I didn't see.
So I'll show you. It's Tosfot. Okay. So that's part of the sources here. Okay.
I didn't get that.
Okay. So let's I said. Okay.
Cool.
All right. So let's start with the Mishnah in Kiddushin on Daf Samach Aleph Amud Aleph. So the Mishnah says, Rabbi Meir Omer, Kol Tnai she'eino k'tnai b'nei Gad u'b'nei Reuven, eino Tnai. So there are certain conditions which constitute a legal condition, right? What requirements you need in order that a Tnai should be valid, and they're derived from Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. Vayomer al Shnei Amar Yom Alehem Im Yavru Bnei Gad uVnei Reuven Uktiv Im Lo Yavru Chalutzim. Okay. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer Tzarich Hadavar Lo Omro Shem Alakein Yesh B'Mashma Shafilu Be'Eretz Canaan Lo Yinchalu. So Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel disagrees with the issue here of Tnai Kaful. Okay. Let's leave him aside. And I just want to map out what the requirements are. Every requirement, whether you talk about Tnai Kaful, well, let's see what they are. And there's room to give a whole shiur on each separate requirement, right? But I don't want to do that. I just want to have an overview of the requirements, and then I want to talk about how Tnai works particularly. Okay, so the best way to do this is look at the Rambam here in Hilchot Ishut Perek Vav. Perek Vav in Hilchot Ishut is the Perek of Tnaim in the Rambam, where he talks about all sorts of Tnaim. Okay, HaMekadesh al Tnai, Im Nitkayem HaTnai, Mekudeshet. V'im lo Nitkayem, Eina Mekudeshet. Bein Haya HaTnai Min HaIsh, Bein Shaya Min HaIsha. Okay, it doesn't matter if it means the man and the woman can be matneh, as opposed to gerushin. Gerushin, the woman can't be matneh because an Isha mitgareshet neged ritzonah, so there's nothing she can say. Okay.
But it says it from the side of the shot. She can suggest it, but he still has to formulate it.
No, she can make the time.
So where would it go in the order that he discusses how it has to be completely in this order?
So when she can say, I accept this kedushin al tanah.
That would be her.
Right before, it would have to be before. Yeah, she would say.
She says, I accept these. She has to say, on condition that.
Well, how she has to say it, we'll see. Okay. V'chol t'nai sheba'olam, bein b'kiddushin, bein b'gerushin, bein b'mekach u'memkar, bein b'shar dinei mamon, tzarich liot b'tnai arba'a dvarim. So there are 4 conditions that we need to be filled in order that the condition should be valid. Okay. Ve'elu hein arba'a dvarim shel kol t'nai. Sheyeh t'nai kaful, v'sheyeh hein shelo kodem l'lav, v'sheyeh t'nai kodem l'maseh, v'sheyeh t'nai davar she'efshar l'kaymo. Okay. Ve'im chaser t'nai echad mehen, harei ha't'nai. The Rambam is also using the funny language, using it twice, right? Harei ha't'nai batel, u'ki'ilu ein sham t'nai klal. Right? This is very important. El tiyeh zo mikudeshet o migureshet, v'yitkayem ha'mekach o matana miyad, ki'ilu lo hitna klal, ho'il v'chaser ha't'nai echad min ha'arba. Okay? We theoretically could have imagined something else. Okay?
It's very not okay. Meaning if the whole, I don't know why we're doing the Tnai Kaful, but to make sure, all the options are clear.
We're going to see that.
As clear. Then to suddenly say she's still Mikadeshet.
If the Tnai is pasum.
Right.
So we'll talk about that.
There's so much confusion involved there.
Okay. said it. I'm just unfolding this right now. Okay. So there are four things the Rama mentions, right? You need the Tnai should be Tnai kaful. Right? The Rama gives examples. Okay. That means you have to say if X, if im, I don't know, titnili matayim zuz hariat mikudeshet li, vim lo titnili matayim zuz einat mikudeshet li. Right? That would be Tnai kaful. And then the second thing is hein kodem lalav. Right? You need to say im titnili tiyem mikudeshet, lo titnili lo tiyem mikudeshet, and not the other way around. Im lo titnili lo tiyem mikudeshet, titnili tiyem mikudeshet. That's not good. You need the Tnai Kodem L'Maaseh. On this point, there's a machloket what Tnai Kodem L'Maaseh is. I'm just without any lumps, just the facts, okay? Tnai Kodem L'Maaseh, the Ravid understands that it has to do only with the formulation. Because you have to say, you have to state the condition first. Im titnili az tiyem mikudeshet. But if you say, tiyem mikudeshet im titnili, that's no good. Okay? That would be the Maaseh before the Tnai. The Rambam understands that the Tnai, Kodem L'Maaseh, means you have to state the Tnai before you actually do the Maaseh. Okay? Because before the man gives the Kesef Kiddushin, the Tnai has to be stated. There it's easier to understand because once he's done the Kiddushin, it's, as they say in Yiddish, it's farfan, right? You can't make a condition after she's Mekudesha, right? Even if it's Toch Kedei Dibur, that's the condition. Okay? So there's machloket what Tnai Kodem L'Maaseh is. It's in this parak in the Rambam. Okay? And the last thing is Shiyah Tnai Davar She'efshar L'Kaimo. The Rambam's interpretation of that is that otherwise we don't take it seriously. Right? If a person says Har'el potentially al Lenachetali L'Rakia, right? In those days it wasn't really possible. So then he's just he's not serious. So the Tnai is bater. Okay? In addition to that, there's another condition, which the Rambam for some reason doesn't list in these four, and that is that it can't be matneh al mashe katuv b'Torah. Okay?
He reads that as part of.
He lists it, yes, but he doesn't list it as part of the four. The four things, and he says
he reads it as part of Efshar L'Kaimo, I think.
No.
No, it's the opposite for.
If you look towards the end of the parak, wait a second.
He says,
Starting from halacha chet, harei shitneh b'davar she'efshar la'asoto, ela she'Torah asra oto. Kigon shamar l'isha im tochli chele v'dam harei at mekudeshet li b'dinar zeh v'im lo tochli lo ti mekudeshet. Right? So he wants it to eat chazer, but he learned Masech Bav Metzia and he learned Masech Kiddushin. Okay? And so if he says it like that, so he says, V'char shitneh natan dinar or get biyada, harei atnai kayam. That's a good Tnai. Okay? V'im avra v'achla, tiyeh mekudeshet or megureshet. V'im lo achla, ina mekudeshet v'ina megureshet. V'ein omrim b'zeh, harei hitneh ma shekatuv b'Torah, shaharei biyada shelo tochal, v'lo titkadesh, v'lo titkadesh. So even though the Maaseh, which he stipulates, is forbidden, the Tnai is still a good Tnai. Okay? So what is matneh ma shekatuv b'Torah? So that's halacha tet. Ubameh amru kol matneh ma shekatuv b'Torah tnao batel chutz midavar shebemamon kigon shekidesh o giresh o natan o machar al Tnai shehu rotzeh b'tnao sheyizkeh atzmo b'davar shelo ziktalo Torah uman'a mimenu o yiftor atzmo b'tnao midavar shechiva bo Torah she'omrim lo tnaecha batel ukvar nitkaimu ma'asecha ve'ein ata niftar midavar shechiva otcha bo haTorah v'lo tizkeh b'davar shemana otcha mimenu. For example, the example that the Gemara gives is Hayat Mekudeshet Li Aminat She'ein Lachalai Sher Ksut Va'ona. Right, to the chiyuvim of the husband, which are the oraita, Sher Ksut Va'ona. So if he wants Kiddushin without the obligation of Sher Ksut Va'ona, so that's Matneh ma shekatuv b'Torah. Yeah. There's a Gemara in it's Gemara in Ketubot and it's in Bava Metzia. So in that case, the Tnai is batel, and the Maaseh is kayam, That means she is mekudeshet, and he's chayav b'sher ksut v'ona. Right? Now, I could have imagined, in all these cases, I could have imagined something else. Right? I could have imagined that if the Tnai is no good, that there should be no kiddushin. Right? That would be the alternative. Right? He makes it Tnai. If the Tnai is good, she's mekudeshet, or megureshet, or the whatever action we're talking about, if it's in Dinei Mamonot as well. So we say that the Maaseh is Kayam, and the Tnai is Batel. So it's as if there was no Tnai here. But what I could have imagined is, no, if you do the Tnai, and the Tnai is valid, so then she's Mekudeshet, and the Tnai has to be fulfilled in order for the Kedushin to take place. If the Tnai is no good, then I could say, not Mekudeshet at all. Right? It is, if you just step back for a second and think about it, it is a little funny to say the person stipulates a Tnai. His dot, or in the case of Kiddushin, her dot is required. So they make a Tnai and they say, this is my dot. I, Mekadesh, I'll Tnai that she gives me Matayim Zuz. But I don't say, Im Titni li Matayim Zuz, Hared Mekudeshet li. I say, Hared Mekudeshet li, Im Titni li Matayim Zuz. Okay? But then my dot is the same dot, right? So I don't want to be Mekudeshet. I don't want her to be Mekudeshet to me. If he no longer tells me Matayim Zuz, Hared Mekudeshet li al menach yirtze Abba. I don't want to be Mekadesh the woman against her father's will, right? Im lo rotzeh, v'im eino rotzeh, einach Mekudeshet. But I didn't say it that way. Okay? So all of a sudden she's Mekudeshet anyway, because my Tnai, because I didn't formulate the Tnai properly. Right? So it's a little strange. It's actually very strange. Okay, that it should be like that. So for this, let's take a look. We're not the first people to ask this question. Tosfot asked this question. Tosfot in Ketubot Adaf Nun Vav Amud Aleph. Okay, and this is on the Gemara that says it makes a Tnai. Haret Mekudeshet li al menat she'en lachalai sher ksut va'ona. So the Gemara says, Harei Mekudeshet v'tna'o batel. Right? She is Mekudeshet to him, and he's chayav in sher ksut va'ona. Okay? So Tosfot asks, the fourth line of the Tosfot, v'tema. Everybody see that? Towards the beginning. The first word on the line is samach al aleph, right? V'tema. Im kain, amai hi Mekudeshet. Harei hitne b'feirush, she'im yehela alav sher ksut va'ona, she'ena mekudeshet. Right? He said, if I'm chayav in sher ksut va'ona, I don't want her to be mekudeshet. So what do you stick it to him? No, she is mekudeshet and you chayav sher ksut va'ona, but that's not what I wanted. Okay? Ve'ein lomar dilakach mekudeshet Lefisha mitkatsha al menat shetimcholo v'harei machla. Right? You don't say that. De'ein mechilata mechila, for whatever reason. Okay? And he gives another example where it's not shayach b'chlal to talk about mechila. So he's stuck. Okay? V'omeri, skip the down line. De'i lav di alfina mitnai b'nei Gad v'nei Reuven. Hava amina de shum tnai eno mevatel et ha'maaseh. Va'afilu lo yitkayem besof ha'maaseh kayam. Well, he turns the tables. He says that the possibility to make any conditions at all in any transaction is a chiddush. That's what you learn. That possibility only exists because Eivra Yarden was good grazing land. Right? Because of Tnai B'nei Gad B'nei Reuven. If it wasn't for Tnai B'nei Gad B'nei Reuven, and if it wasn't for that parsha, we would say that you cannot stipulate conditions. Okay, we'll have to see what that means, right? But he flips it, so he turns the tables. He says, if it wasn't for the Chiddush of the Torah, any time there was a Maaseh Kiddushin, a Maaseh Gerushin, a Maaseh Kinyan, that would be it. And you couldn't stipulate, I'll Tnai this or I'll Tnai that. Right? So then you have a Chiddush that you can stipulate Tnaim. So once it's once it's a chiddush that you can stipulate Tnaim, so then only if you stipulate the Tnai the way it says in the Torah. Okay? That's what he says. V'hashta the alfina mehatam the mahani tlai levatel maaseh. Now that we learn from Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven that Tnai is effective to invalidate an action. It's very, very important, his formulation. Amrinan dedafka ksheino matneh ma shekatuv b'Torah dumid Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven shelo etnu al ma shekatuv b'Torah. Because that's the example in the Gemara in Ketubot. Okay, so the formulation here is actually very important because what he's saying, first of all, he's saying that actions speak louder than words. That the Havamina is not such a crazy thing. You're doing an action, doing a Maaseh Kinyan, or Maaseh Kiddushin, Maaseh Gerushin. And then you're saying things that accompany that. But the action is a Maaseh Kiddushin. So the action of the Maaseh Kiddushin is more powerful than what you say. We don't care what you say. We're not listening to what you say. It's what you're doing that counts. Right? So the actions speak louder than words. Right? First,
It doesn't have any meaning. I mean, like. It
no,
doesn't mean
she
anything,
accepts.
but
No,
it's
she
like-
agrees. All right.
I mean, that this action only has meaning when I say Har'el Mikudeshet.
Right. You said Aret Mekudeshet Li, and you said it all tonight. So without Bnei Gad Bnei Reuven, you did the Kiddushin. You said you gave the Kesef, and you said Aret Mekudeshet
Some
Li.
words are meaningful and other words aren't meaningful.
But there are actions which are more meaningful than the words. We have to still work. That's the first step. Okay. What he's doing here, he's really he's juxtaposing there are like two different elements in what's going on. Okay? There's the Maaseh and there's the Tnai. Okay? And what you want to accomplish when you make a Tnai is through the Tnai you want to be Mavatel the Maaseh. Right? Because you want to say, this Maaseh Kiddushin, which by its nature should be Chal, period. Right? You want to say, no, I don't want it to be Chal. I don't want it to be Chal until X, Y, or Z happens. Right? So what you want to do is limit, or be Mevatel, if the Tnai is not Mikuyam, you want to be Mevatel the Maaseh. So you have two foci. Right? There's the Tnai and there's the Maaseh, and they are in opposition to each other. Okay? Yeah.
So I understand how his logic says therefore the Tnai doesn't work, but don't you still have a problem with the Maaseh Kiddushin? Because if you have a requirement of that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. Yeah. Okay. Let's flesh this out some more. For this, I want to go back to a Gemara that I mentioned in passing last week, and I want to do that together with Tosafot. Okay? It's a Gemara in Ketubot and Daf Ayin Daled Amud Aleph. Okay? So the Gemara says, the Gemara is actually talking about what happens if the Kiddushin is Al Tnai, and then there's Nisuin. Okay? And this is directly relevant. This is the main Gemara in that discussion about Kiddushin Al Tnai, revolves around this Gemara and Daf Ayin Daled Amud Aleph. Okay? Itmar Nami, Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kadesh Al Tnai U'Ba'al. Divrei HaKol, Einat Shricha Hemenu Get. The Tnai is Batel. And the Maaseh is Kayam. I'm sorry. Einat Shricha Hemenu Get. That means she's not Mikudeshet. The Tnai is Kayam. Eiti Vervacha Bred Rav Iko Ber Achte, Chalitza Muteit Kshera, Ezu Chalitza Muteit, if the Chalitza is done by accident, what does that mean? Kol Omer Lo Chalotzla B'Kachata Konsa. So we misled the person, we mislead the Choletz. Right? We say, do this, and this is how you Mekadesh it. Right? So that is, the Chalitza is still good. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Nishoneh, בין שנתכוון הוא ולא נתכוונה היא, בין שנתכוונה היא ולא נתכוונה הוא, חליצתה פסולה. עד שהתכוונו שניהם. ואת אמרת חליצתה כשרה. אלא אמר רבי יוחנן, כל שאומר לו חלוץ לה על מנת שתיתן לך 200 זוז. Okay? So what do we see from there? The chalitza is good and the Tnai is batel. Alma came the avad ma'aseh. Achule achle l'tnai. So we see from this, Kevan, since it did the chalitza, so that means the Tnai is nimcha. Hachanami Kevan the Baal achule achle l'tnai. So Bi'ilah would indicate that the Tnai is nimchal. Right? And therefore, she should require a get even if the Tnai is not fulfilled. Right? Amarle barbe rav shapi ka'amrit. Michti kol Tnai your comparison is no good. Michti kol Tnai mehecha gamrinan. Where do we learn Tnaim from? Mitnai b'nei Gad u'bnei Reuven. Tna'ad efshar l'kiyumei ayidei shaliach kihatam. There, Yerushat Haaretz was possible ayidei shaliach, right? The shlichim were zocheh in the nachalot. That's actually where you learn shlichut from. Okay, it's one of the sources in Kiddushin Daf Mem Bet where they learn shlichut from. Okay, so Tnai the efshel kumei ki shliach ki hatam havi tnaei tna'a. The lo efshel kumei shliach ki hatam lo havi tna'a. And chalitza cannot be done ayidei shliach. So that's why it's not because there was a mechila of the Tnai, but there's simply no Tnai which is valid. Okay, and that's how you fool him, right? You want to do chalitza, say make a Tnai, whatever Tnai you want, make a Tnai, she'll do it. And then he's chalitz al Tnai, and you say, okay, go jump in the lake, right? Because the Tnai wasn't chal, but you can't make a Tnai in chalitza, right? And that's and the explanation that we saw in Reb Chaim last week, right? Okay, let's take a look at Tosfot. So Tosfot wants to understand what is the meaning of this condition that we require that it should be able to be fulfilled by Yidei Shaliach. There's a lot of things happening in Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. We don't require that it should be that every condition should have to do with land. Right? We say conditions apply in Mitatlin, and conditions apply in Gittin, and conditions apply in Kiddushin. So why should we say that there was it was a possible Yidei Shaliach, and this is also Yidei Shaliach? Right? There are a million things that you could pick on. Right? Only if Moshe Rabbeinu was present, because there were Tnai. Right? So why that? So Tosfot says as follows: V'im tomar umas svara yesh kan delo gamrinan mihatam ela linyan mashu svara dahalo yafin mihatam delo mahani tnai ela betinat karka. Right? V'yesh lomar dahainu tama dahoil v'hamaaseh kol kach biyado shiachol l'kaimo ayedei shaliach svarahu shiyehei kemochen biyado l'shivuye beit tna'a. This goes what I was talking about last time. You asked me where it was. Okay? That the fact that a person has ownership over the action, okay? That I can decide to go to the store and buy something, and I can decide not to buy something, right? And I have such ownership over that action that I can make you a shaliach to buy it for me. So I can empower someone else to act on my behalf. That means I have ownership over the action, right? So since I have the legal power to empower someone else to act on my behalf, the same way that I have that authority, I also have the authority to say, and I only want this action to take place, just like I'm saying, I only want this action to take place, in a sense, when you do it for me, right? So I only want this action to take place if the following stipulation is filled.
Wait, so if chalitza, if someone is...
so chalitza is not like that.
Right, chalitza is not like that. That's saying that if my my brother is 1,000 miles away, I can't be mamane beitin to release his wife.
Correct.
I have to go physically to her presence, or vice versa.
Yeah, chalitza cannot be done ayidei shaliach.
Wow.
right? Chalitza has to be in person.
Great.
Okay? And that is because, what we talked about last time, that in a sense, you need the man, and you need the yavam, and you need the shomeret yavama, you need the yavama, and you need a nal, and you need rok. There are all these things that you need, right? And you need dad. You have to know what's going on to a certain degree, right? That you all need that, and when you have all that, you have chalitza. It's not that the man initiates the chalitza to the woman in the same way that we say that the man is mekadesh the woman, or the man is megaresh the woman. In chalitza, we say he's choletz, but he's not really. He's in the brisker terminology. He's there as a chefza, not as a gavra. Understand? He's not a halachic actor. Right? He's just there because we need him there. Okay? The way we need rok, etc. Okay? So, and that's why since there's no shaliach, that indicates that you can't make a Tnai either. Just like I gave the example last week of basar b'chalav. Right? If the basar falls into the chalav, it's basar b'chalav. You can't make a Tnai that I have my basar, my chalav, I mix it together, and I only want it to be asar and basar b'chalav if it rains tomorrow. You can't do that. It's basar b'chalav. It's mitziut. Right? The halach is derived from the realia. Okay? Whereas in Gittin and Kiddushin and in Kinyanim, it's not like that. There's a person who, of course, it all comes from the fact that the Torah recognizes it, but it's of a second order. The person is the one who creates the halachic reality. Okay?
I don't really understand that backwards. Like, that wouldn't be obvious to me about chalitza too.
Right. No, it's empirical. Right, for sure. I mean, I could have, just because something is logical, I can imagine a lot of things that are logical that are not true, especially in Israel, but it doesn't matter, right? Just because something is logical doesn't mean that it's true. It could have been, the Torah could have said that nevela is mutter and eating meat in certain restaurants is asur, right? But it didn't say that. It could name the restaurant, right? But it didn't do that. The Torah said that nevela was asur. If it would have said nevela was mutter, then nevela would be mutter. Right? So it says that this is how chalitza works. You're right. You could have said chalitza is like getting kiddushin, or could have said getting kiddushin is like chalitza. But the way, from the empirical data of the Gemara, it's not like that. Right? But you could have imagined it differently for sure. Okay. So what emerges here again, and I want to sharpen this a bit, is that because, say, in Gittin and Kiddushin as opposed to Chalitza, you have two things that are going on. There's the dot of the perpetrator, not as a criminal, right? But the person who's doing the action. There's a physical action which is being done. That would be the giving of the kesef, or the meshicha mechefetz, whatever the physical action is. And then there is what the person's intention is, that what that action should accomplish. Right? So the action of the Maaseh Kiddushin is that as a consequence of this, we have Kiddushin. We have a Eshet Ish, right? As a consequence of a kinyan on a chayfetz, so now I own the chayfetz, as the transfer of ownership, as a consequence of my action, right? The Maaseh, the Netina of the get, so I have the heter of the Isser Eshet Ish. That's the chalot, the taking effect of the action. Right? What happens in shlichut and what happens in Tnai is analogous. That in shlichut, since I am mufkad, I have ownership over the action. So I say, you do the action. I'm a maneh shaliach to do the action for me. I can do that. That's a chiddush of the Torah that you can't do that, but you can do that. But when you do that action, the consequences of that action relate to me, and they don't relate to you. Because if I send you to the makolet as a shaliach, I don't just say, do me a favor, buy a bag of milk. So you go, you buy a bag of milk. When you do the kinyan, whose milk is it? If you're not my shaliach, it's your milk until you bring it back to me, right? But if I make you a shaliach to go get me a bag of milk, when you do the Maaseh Kinyan in the makolet, at that moment, that bag of milk becomes mine. I could be in Hong Kong, right? Because you're acting as my shaliach. So the action, you physically do the action. The consequences of that action relate to me. So I can make a shaliach, someone to be Mekadesh a woman for me. Right? When Eliezer was Mekadesh Rivka, right? Do it feel halachically. At that moment, she became Yitzchak's wife. Even though Yitzchak was off in the Sadeh thinking about other things, right? But at that moment, at the moment that the Maaseh was done, right? So the Chalot of that Maaseh relates to the Mishaleh. Okay? Similarly, when you talk about a Tnai, you're doing the same thing. You're saying, I'm doing the action, but I'm playing around, in a sense, I'm playing around with the Chalot. I'm playing around with the taking effect of the action. Okay? So I'm doing the Maaseh Kiddushin, but I don't want the Kiddushin to be Chal, I want the Kiddushin to be held in abeyance until her father agrees. Until my father agrees. Until Shetitni li 200 zuz. Right? And if she stipulates, until I give her 200 zuz. Oh, Achid Baresh Ani Tzadik Gamur, or I'm a Levi, or something like that, right? So there's also this split between the dot which controls the chalot and the physical action. And they are in opposition when there's a Tnai. Right? Because normally you do the action, you have dot that the action should be, that the action should take effect, and the action takes effect. But now I want to limit the taking effect of the action. And that's what the Tnai does. Okay? Okay. Okay. The way I painted it now is that the action, the Maaseh, and the Tnai, is everybody with me?
I'm hearing all the words you say and the words that I understand, but I don't actually
Okay.
know
Oh, let's just stop there.
what
What?
you're talking about.
What?
No, but I mean, I don't know what other people feel.
What?
Like, I don't.
Lay it out on Reuben and Gad and Reuben.
They're not
B'nai Gad and B'nai Reuven.
I think give some examples.
Okay. A man is Mekadesh a woman. Al menat shetitni li 200 zuz. Okay? He does the Maaseh Kiddushin now. When she gives him 200 zuz, she's Mekudeshet. Could be a year later. From that moment on that she's Mekayem at the Tnai, if he stipulated it's something that she has to do, or if it's something that somebody else has to do, Al menat yirtzeh Abba, or she says Al menat yirtzeh Abba. When he finds out about it, he says, "Oh, Mazel Tov," right? At that point, the Kiddushin is Chal. Right? So he did a Maaseh Kiddushin before. In the meantime, she's not Mekudeshet until the Tnai happens. Right?
And the interpretation you're suggesting is that the goal of the Tnai is that she actually doesn't do it, so there's no Kiddushin.
No, I don't know what the goal. Maybe he wants her to do it. He wants to be Mekadesh, or he wants to be Mekadesh the Tnai of the 200 zuz.
But you suggested there's a opposite pull between the Tnai and the Maaseh.
Because the Tnai wants to limit the Maaseh, that the Maaseh should take effect only under certain conditions. Whereas if you let the action have free reign, so to speak, if you Mekadesh without the Tnai, so then she's Mekudeshet now. You would say, no, I'm doing the Maaseh Kiddushin, and she really should be Mekudeshet now. But no, I only want it to be if X, Y, and Z. So we're going to hold off. Okay? So the Tnai is something that is in opposition, is always in opposition to the action. Whether he wants it or not, that's a separate issue. Right? He wants it to be Mekayem the Tnai, or he doesn't want it to be Mekayem the Tnai. That could be relevant. We'll talk about it a little bit later. Okay?
It's as if the action has no link to his feelings. I don't get it really. Maybe.
He's stipulating when.
Yes, but it's not as if the Tnai isn't met or if the Tnai wasn't valid Tnai. If we just nixed the Tnai, which is what
So
we're
she's
going to do.
Mekudeshet anyway.
But that's not actually what he wanted. So if that had been the scenario, he would have never done the action. So I don't get how the action.
So
has
that's
power
that.
of its own,
So hold on.
separate
We'll talk about
object.
that. Hold on to that question. That's an important question that we will clarify. Okay, just hold on for a second. The looking at it that way. Let me ask you a question. This was a question that came up in that the Rush dealt with. It's also in the Rambam. Suppose the couple makes the following condition. He's Mekadesh, and then, but he's going off on a business trip, right? So she doesn't want to be Mekadesh. She said, okay, Har'el Mekudeshet li, only if I come back within 12 months. If I don't come back within 12 months, then it's off. Okay? And it's a Tnai that's made that otherwise she doesn't agree. Okay? Al menat she'echzor toch yud beit chodesh. Okay? But before he goes, he leaves. Right? No. It's not that. Before he leaves, they talk about it, and she says, oh, you know what? I'll give you 2 years. Right? They just changed the Tnai. This is not in the ma'amad of the Kiddushin. The Kiddushin have been given already. The money doesn't exist anymore. Right? But they changed the Tnai. Right? Or she was mochel the Tnai entirely. She said, you know what? No matter when you come back, I'll wait for you. Right? Yellow ribbons on the oak tree. Okay? I'll wait for you, whatever it is. Okay? So what happens if he doesn't come back within 12 months? In other words, is it possible to be mevatel the Tnai after you make it? Okay? And here, take a look at the rush.
No.
What?
No.
Everybody thinks you can.
That you can
Yes.
change it.
You can change it and be mevatel it, yes. Take a look at the rush. The question
I'm
of the
realizing
conditions,
that-
just hold on.
I'm realizing that speaking up and being wrong actually helps me to remember things.
Okay.
I'm gonna. if you
It's
don't mind.
Ein Adam Omed Al Divrei Torah Elam Kenev Shalom. Okay. So this is the rush in Klaus Lamed Hey Siman Tet. Okay. I'll try to just do the. This is a longer tshuva. Let's just get the crux of it here. If you look, I don't know how it's laid out by you. It's the first one on the line is Lihitkayim below Kiyum Hatnai. See that?
Like how far down?
How far? About a third of the way into the tshuva, maybe between a third and a half of the way down.
I see
Okay.
an exclamation point. Where are you in relation to that?
I don't see an exclamation point.
Okay, but
Where? And give me the first one on the line that you're looking at.
There's a parenthetical nun tet. It's 2 lines before that.
I have the first word on the line that. Oh, I see. Okay, good. Yeah, up from there, like 2 lines, 3 lines. Ve'ein lecha bo el chidusho. Okay. The kevan shekain. Agree with me? 3 lines up from that nun tet in parentheses. So don't look for the newspaper. The first word on the line is aleph with a thing. B'davar echad. Aleph. Okay? Okay. The chidusho, right, that Tnai b'nei Gad b'nei Reuven, ve'en lecha bo el chidusho, v'kemen shekenu, shama'aseh hu b'fnei atzmo, v'ra'ui litkayem below kiyum hatnai. And this is the same way of thinking that we saw in Tosfot. That B'nai Gad Reuven is a chidush, and that really, if it wasn't for that chidush, then the fact that you did the action, that should be sufficient, and it should take effect without conditions. Below kiyum hatnai, el di alfina mitnai B'nai Gad B'nai Reuven, that we learned that it's not like that. Im kain yacholu levatel hatnai, shehu maaseh b'fnei atzmo. Ve'ein kiyum ha'maaseh talui bo. The dibur ba'almahu. Just words. To hear a Jew say that, but it's just words, right? It's just words, right? It's based on the sugi. Va'ati dibur, the bitul hatnai, umevatel dibur shel hatnai, v'nish'ar ha'maaseh kayam.
Wait, but the example you gave was that they changed the Tnai.
Well, if you
change
can
it
be
from one
mevatel
year
the
to-
Tnai, you can certainly change the Tnai.
Lavdafka.
Yeah, he assumes that it's not. That's like that. Okay, take a look at the truth. Okay, Kidachazina b'kiddushin gabe plukta de Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Shlokish de pligi b'mekadesh isha la'achal lamed yom v'chazra ba toch lamed yom. Changed their mind. But Rabbi Yochanan dibur mevatel dibur, right? Va'af al gav dahatam ikam ma'aseh netinat ma'ot liyada isha. Okay, so he has a number of sugyot that he proves it from. But what he's saying is that it's possible, after the ma'aseh is done together with the Tnai, it is possible to be mevatel the Tnai. because the Maaseh and the Tnai are two separate things. What does that mean? Hold on one
Only
second.
before it's hot. Right, it has to be within the 30 days.
After it's chal, so it's chal. I mean, if the Tnai was mitkayem, so you can't go back and mevatel.
No, the case you said, I had understood it was, she said you have a year. What if she decided in the 14th month, I'll give him another year?
Oh, right, then forget it. No.
Then
Yeah, for sure. That's true. If then the kiddushin is batel and finished, right? We're talking about when it's
spell it out for me. To be mevatel tonight, okay, I can accept this. But to change
he talks
it,
about it two ways.
If there's, hold on, let me just, if I'm mevatel the first Tnai, so in the kiddushin chal, how do I sneak the second one in there? Meaning, how do I change the terms entirely without redoing the whole mamad?
So that's part of what he talks about here. There are two ways of talking about it. Either it means that you really made a new Tnai, or the fact that the Kedushin, the way he talks about it, is that the Kedushin is held in abeyance, so now you have the flexibility to renegotiate the Tnai. As long as it's been waiting, it's in abeyance. It's like the chalot, you have to picture it almost as if it's a physical reality. Picture a chalot as if it's a physical reality. Did you see, anybody see Interstellar?
Not yet.
Okay, so like the other dimensions are pictured in physical realities. I don't want to I don't want to be a spoiler, right? But there are other dimensions are pictured in terms of physical reality. So picture a legal reality as if it's physical. So you have something hovering and waiting to be chal, right? So you have this kiddushin that's hovering because there was a maaseh kiddushin, but it was on Tnai. So the Tnai is like making it hover. It hasn't taken effect. Mm-hmm. The Isser Eshet Ish is hovering over this woman, but it hasn't fallen upon her yet, right? So there's room for changing the Tnai until that happens. That's how he talks about it.
What Eliezer is saying is I imagine this Tnai is holding up that hovering thing. So the moment you pull out
right, so it's not,
one to try to
so we have two hands. I know. I was actually thinking. So it's like this,
So you push one in, it just replaces the other block.
But what he's doing here. Okay, what he's I understand. But it would have to be sort of the same. It probably have to be the same sort of thing, and not like a totally new Tnai. And they said 12 months, and now she's saying 16 months. Now she's saying 24 months. It's not like, okay, forget about that. Now just give me my time Zeus.
That's a very slippery slope.
I understand it could have things which are difficult to define, but that's the important point is that he looks at the Tnai and the Maaseh as being opposed to each other. Okay, and therefore you can be mevatel the Tnai as long as the Maaseh hasn't been chal yet. You can be mevatel the Tnai and the Maaseh is kayam. Okay. A different.
So back to the Bia case. So there, what?
In which case?
Wasn't the Gemara the case that the Tosfot is on the case of the Bia? Why? I thought you started this off to explain that line of the Gemara, or did I lose that totally?
Tosfos just wants to know why you need.
That Hamakadesh al Tnai Ba'al.
Right. Then how you could.
So why explain all this?
No. It's not about. It's not about that. No. From there, it's implicit that you can mevatel the Tnai because there you're choshesh that is mevatel the Tnai. So the Gemara talks about the possibility of uchli achle the Tnai. So you see that from there also. That's part of what he's talking about. Okay. All right. There's another way of looking at it, and there may be differences in halacha based on how we look at it. The way I did it, I said it now, is that you have the action, and then sort of tacked on to the action is small print, right? I call it small print, right? It can have very big ramifications, but it's small print because it's sort of tacked on. Okay? I do the maaseh. I want that to be kedushin, but it should only be al Tnai. And the Rosh says you can mevatel the Tnai, and the maaseh is still kayam. Okay? This I'm getting to what's bothering. To one of the things that's bothering you is that Sof he doesn't have da'at to be mekadesh. Okay, so hold on, I'm getting it. So one way of looking at it is that it's sort of an additional thought. Tnai is an additional thought that I can change it afterwards because it's not the maaseh itself. Okay, that's how the Rosh looks at it. Another way of looking at it would be to say that when a person is Mekadesh al Tnai, or Mekadesh al Tnai, whatever that is being done al Tnai, he's actually forging a new Ma'aseh.